Have you ever failed a test that you spent a lot of time studying for and preparing for, and maybe it was because you were anxious or maybe you forgot something silly, but it might have ended up feeling as though your test score didn't accurately represent your knowledge on the topic. This can be so frustrating, and you may begin to wonder if school is teaching us how to take tests or if it's preparing us for our future. The real world isn't about taking high-stakes tests, but school is, which reinforces this question of what is school teaching us? Personally, much of my high school education was spent preparing for and taking high-stakes tests, and this emphasis is hurting students and should be replaced with more effective alternatives. Students are suffering from a lowered quality of education because of the prominence of high-stakes tests. Standardized tests make sense from the beginning. They are an effective way to measure the scores of students from all across the state or even the nation, and that makes sense, but not all students learn the same, and not all students are test the same way. So if they aren't even really accurate and they're taking away from our education, it's according to Audrey Amrine in David Berliner's 2003 article entitled The Effects of High-Stakes Testing on Student Motivation and Learning, standardized testing was implemented to increase student motivation to achieve, as well as to measure learning. Instead, it has not only significantly lowered student motivation, it has caused some students, especially those from low socioeconomic backgrounds, to drop out of school. In fact, the bottom fifth of students are 25% more likely to drop out of high school in states with high-stakes testing. Amrine and Berliner question whether improved scores really demonstrate increased learning or happen as a result of steps catered to the test, such as narrowing the curriculum. Lori Hugh, the author of What's Worth Learning in School, which was published in winter 2015, also comments on this, saying, "Too often, we tend to focus on short-term successes, scoring well on a quiz, acing a spelling test. Unfortunately, all of that test knowledge, all of that accumulated knowledge we thought was worth knowing, becomes useless if not used." Beyond the problems with the tests themselves, the focus on high-stakes testing means that some students are overlooked, and that most students end up stressed and not taking care of themselves properly. At my high school, it was normal for students to stay up all night or most of the night studying for a big test and finishing homework. Sleep and Health, an article published by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on May 29, 2019, advises that high school-age students should get 8 to 10 hours of sleep each day in order to stay focused, improve concentration, and improve academic performance. However, 72.7% of high school students across the nation did not get enough sleep on school nights. Instead, we should focus on alternatives to standardized and high-stakes testing that allow students to learn more effectively. Anya Kamenetz spoke about some of these options in her January 6, 2015 article called What Schools Could Use Instead of Standardized Tests. These alternatives include using the same standardized tests, but on a smaller sample of the student population, gathering data about student learning throughout online activities without disrupting the learning itself, inspecting schools, or combining multiple techniques such as using both portfolios of completed work and game-based assessments. I love Carabelle's story, which she shared in her January 27, 2020 article entitled, Why My Learning Disabilities Make Me a Better Teacher. She discusses the struggle to retain information with learning disabilities and what she has gained from the experience. She advocates that educators should have a goal to look for and nurture the abilities students do have, rather than focusing on those they lack. The challenge then is to find a way to nurture each student in a class of 30 or even 10 students. It's just not always possible to give every single student a personalized learning plan. But we can use strategies that are shown to help all or most students in their learning process. Megan Sumeraki compiled a list of some of these effective learning strategies in 6 Strategies for Effective Learning, a summary for teachers, which was published on November 28, 2019. Some of her suggestions include interleaving, spacing, and practicing retrieval. So, interleaving is mixing up the topics that you discuss. Spacing is allowing time in between topics in order to force you to practice retrieval. So students have to remember what they've learned in the past in order to understand what they're learning now. So what happens if we do nothing? Well, we're already seeing that. Students are lacking motivation. They may not go on to higher education because they're already so burnt out in high school. Some students are even dropping out before they finish high school. But what can happen if we do make a change? Well, hopefully, we will see a higher level of interest from students in the things that they are learning. Maybe they'll get involved with the learning process and take ownership and learn about things that interest them, look into them on their own time. I believe that taking ownership over your learning is a great way to have success in your future career. So I believe that reorienting the learning and teaching process is important, taking the focus away from standardized testing and towards student learning and achievement. This can be done at a small level or at a larger legislative level. But what you and I can do is be aware of some of these techniques, using things like practicing retrieval in our real lives. That will help both teachers and students. And I know that this change would benefit me as well as all students. And maybe we will no longer have to worry about our tests.